Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here, and I'm thrilled to be presenting for you tonight the product owner and Scrum Master brain transplant. Mwahahahaha. My name is Alex Sloley, and I'm here to present a terrible, terrible Scrum experiment. So, I'm an Agile coach from Sydney, Australia, and I'm extremely passionate about giving back to the Agile community, the Scrum community, by presenting, attending conferences. And so that's why I'm presenting tonight. I am thrilled to be here. In fact, I'm so passionate about this subject that I've even written a book about it. It's called The Agile Community. You can find it at this link, agiletwist.com, TAC. If you want to get more involved in the community and learn how to create conference submissions and help organize conferences and maybe replicate that learning community that's in the world around us today inside your company, then maybe this book can help you out. It's got my learnings and advice in it. But for today, I want to present a horrible experiment because agilists love experimenting, right? So, the experiment we're going to think about today is an experiment about product owners and Scrum Masters. If you're familiar with Scrum, you know that there are accountabilities. People sometimes play accountabilities or roles in Scrum, and one of them is the product owner, and the other one of them is the Scrum Master. Now, I'm guessing many people here are either product owners or have known product owners in the past. And product owners are focused on the product backlog. That's what they're concerned with. They're concerned with producing value on a team. And the way they maximize value on a team is by managing the product backlog. So that's their focus. The Scrum Master, in contrast, they are a leader who serves on a Scrum team. They're the person who guides the team through the framework of Scrum or Agile if you're not doing Scrum. Maybe you're not doing pure Scrum, let's say, but you have a Scrum Master on your team. Um, they're the person who guides the team through how they work together as people. And so they're really focused on people and how they work together. Two entirely different people on a team, right? The product owner on one hand and the Scrum Master on the other. And they have certain behaviors and attributes that maybe some of you are already familiar with. We're going to explore those today because what would happen if you took the brain of a product owner and you put that into the body of a Scrum Master and took the brain of a Scrum Master and put that into the body of a product owner? What would happen? And in fact, let's just kick it off by exploring what would happen if you took a product owner and put a Scrum Master's brain into their product owner. What terrible things would happen in this experiment? Well, I'm sure you might be familiar with Scrum Masters, and if you're familiar with Scrum Masters, what do Scrum Masters like to do? They love to coach, right? They like to coach people. But remember, we've just transplanted brains. So they would no longer coach people. Instead, what would they coach? Well, they would coach the backlog. Imagine you have a product backlog now. Instead of thinking of it as a list of to do work that you have to maintain and that it's tedious and that you as a product owner only have to do yourself or only can do yourself, otherwise known as refining, maybe now you're coaching your backlog. You're embracing a mindset where you're helping that backlog be the best thing it can be, right? That's what coaching is. Coaching is helping people be the best they can be. What if you took that same exact attitude with your backlog? So it's no longer backlog grooming, it's no longer backlog refining, it's now backlog coaching. And you're helping your backlog be a little bit better every single time you have a backlog coaching session. And in fact, coaches and scrum masters love to coach people. Now, in this case, we're talking about coaching the backlog, but they also love to coach other people to coach other people. So, a product owner with a scrum master's brain might start thinking about not only how they're coaching their backlog, but how can they help the entire team learn how to coach the backlog? So now the product owner with the Scrum Master brain is thinking about how can I help my team learn how to coach the backlog? And it's not just me. And in fact, they can go beyond just the team and themselves. Every product owner has to work with stakeholders. Maybe your stakeholders are users and customers in the public, in the real world. Maybe they're internal stakeholders. Maybe they're your startup's CEO or other teams that you work with internally at a giant enterprise company. Can you imagine if you took that same attitude where you're coaching your backlog and you're coaching people on the team to coach the backlog? What if you took that attitude and applied it to your entire ecosystem? How can I help the stakeholders learn how to coach the backlog? And now the entire ecosystem, the entire system of people that's involved and interested in this product backlog are now coaching it together. It's no longer a mechanical refining or grooming activity. It's helping something be the best it can be with a very emergent attitude. All right. So, if you have a product owner with a Scrum Master's brain, what else might they change their perspective on? If they've moved from refining to coaching, perhaps you might have a product owner who starts to think about how can I nurture the product backlog? Because Scrum Masters love to nurture people and nurture teams. What if a product owner took that exact same attitude and started to apply it to the product backlog? What would that horrible experiment look like? Can you imagine a nurturing product owner? If they nurtured their product backlog, they would start to take the attitude of embracing growth in their product backlog because product backlogs are constantly growing, they're constantly expanding just like a tree, just like a plant. What if you, as a product owner, started to embrace that growth, just like they're supposed to do, right? They're not supposed to inhibit product backlog items going into the product backlog. They're supposed to be embracing them, or otherwise known as embracing growth. So they're embracing growth. They're nurturing the product backlog. But just like every healthy tree, we embrace growth. We might also have to prune branches or prune parts of the tree as it grows. So it's a dichotomy for the product owner that's embracing this nurturing attitude. Not only are they embracing growth, but they're also pruning the product backlog as needed. Because to maintain a healthy tree, to maintain a healthy vine or plant, you have to prune it and get rid of the dead wood. And the same exact thing would happen with the product owner maintaining a healthy product backlog. And so many product owners don't love their product backlog. They sometimes even hate their product backlog. But what if the product owner with a Scrum Master's brain loved their product backlog and they loved it every single day? They opened up their product backlog every single day. They embraced growth, they pruned things, and then they loved it. A very coachy attitude. It changes the mindset entirely. So, this product owner with a Scrum Master's brain is now coaching. They're nurturing. Oh, what else might they be doing? Well, a great Scrum Master protects the team. They protect the team from randomization. They protect the team from executives. They protect the team from unplanned work. They protect the team sometimes from their very own product owner. So, can you imagine a product owner that was protective in a healthy way with their product backlog? What would that look like? To protect the product backlog, this product owner with a Scrum Master's brain would want to ensure that all the work in the product backlog was of a high quality. That's a way you make the product backlog useful and valuable. You protect it from stuff that doesn't matter, low value, low quality, and you ensure that it has high value and high quality. So the high quality product backlog items, the high value backlog items naturally go up to the top where they become more nurtured and more coached, otherwise known as refined. While the stuff down at the bottom of the product backlog might be the lower quality, lower value stuff. And that's the stuff at the bottom of the product backlog that gets pruned. So think about that. The top of the backlog, nurtured. The stuff at the bottom of the product backlog gets pruned. And what other ways can the product owner with the Scrum Master brain think about how can I protect the product backlog? They would ensure that it's usable. So when you go into sprint planning or planning of any type, actually, you have to ensure that the backlog of work, or in Scrum, the product backlog, is usable or ready for the team to actually be worked on. So, a great product owner with the Scrum Master's brain or mindset would be thinking about how can I ensure that the work on the top is not only of high quality and high value, but also ready or usable and ready for the team to be able to actually deliver in their next sprint or iteration or whatever you call it. So, by protecting the backlog, they ensure that the backlog is usable and ready and of a reasonably high quality at all times. And if they're consistently coaching their product backlog, then it will be. And they protect it from randomization. Just like any Scrum Master protects the team from randomization, a product owner of the Scrum Master's brain would do the same thing. They would protect their product backlog from randomization. This is a balancing act, I admit, because a product owner with a Scrum Master's brain has to nurture and strive for high quality and protect the product backlog from randomization, but also at the same time embrace all that work that comes into the system, which means this product owner is constantly working with their team and their stakeholders to coach the product backlog. And in normal Scrum terms, that means refining the product backlog. Okay, so now we've explored some aspects, but where can we go from here? What else do Scrum Masters love to do that a product owner might adopt in their team? Because remember, their brain's been transplanted. Oh, well, we all know that Scrum Masters love to remove impediments. Sometimes they help the team remove the impediments. Sometimes they help the team figure out how to remove their impediments, but impediments for sure. How would a product owner with the Scrum Master's brain start to think about impediments? Well, maybe in their product backlog. You'll see how, in this case, we're always going back to the product backlog because that's what the product owner owns. The product owner owns the product backlog. But now they're taking a different mindset, a very Scrum Mastery mindset to the product backlog. Maybe they can start thinking about how can I figure out when work in the product backlog is dependent on other work in the product backlog. They can start to think about while I'm coaching the product backlog, how can I identify dependencies? And in fact, as I coach the team on how to coach the product backlog, and as I coach the stakeholders on how to coach the product backlog, how can we collectively start to figure out how to identify dependencies? Because dependencies are the single biggest impediment to a product owner in the work in their product backlog. And to remove those impediments, you gotta identify the dependencies. So work with your stakeholders. Start to elicit those dependencies with your stakeholders. Obviously, you continue to work with your team, coaching them on coaching the product backlog. But if you can expand that coaching mindset in the product backlog into your entire ecosystem, you can not only start to identify the dependencies, which is equivalent to removing impediments, but maybe, just maybe, you might even be able to get to the point where you're removing dependencies from even happening in the first place. You might be able to get into a state where you're even working with your stakeholders and you're kind of pre-coaching your product backlog. Every great product owner tries to coach their product backlog as much as they're able with their stakeholders before they even start to coach the product backlog with their team. Can you imagine a world where a product owner is able to create high quality stories, high quality work in their product backlog, figuring out how to remove dependencies, otherwise known as impediments? They're working with the stakeholders to pre-coach the product backlog before the product backlog even gets to the team for coaching. That would be a wonderful place to be. But it doesn't end there. This experiment, the product owner with the Scrum Master's brain, it can go even further. So let's explore even further this horrible experiment. Scrum Masters love to remove impediments, but what else do they love to do? Well, they love to experiment. I mean, that's what I'm doing right here with all of you tonight. We're running an experiment. Now, a Scrum Master loves to run experiments with the team on how to make the process and how they're working together better, how to remove waste, and how to have a better, high performing team where people enjoy working together. How can you take this experimental mindset that this Scrum Master has in their brain and put it into the product owner's head? How would they experiment? Well, I'm sure you can see a pattern here. These mindsets that the Scrum Master has, we're taking it and we're putting it in the product owner's body, their head, and they're applying these mindsets to the product backlog. So yes, we're going to talk about how can they embrace experimentation in the product backlog. As a product owner coaches their product backlog, they will learn things. As a team coaches the product backlog and they work on work, they discover things. They're experimenting, they're trying new things, they're learning. That experimental mindset means that a product owner should be ready and willing and able to prune or get rid of the failures from their product backlog that just didn't work. We all have failures in life, and a great product owner with that experimental Scrum Master brain acknowledges when things in the product backlog aren't working and then gets rid of them. They discard them. Those are otherwise known as failures. But as long as you're learning new things, they are valuable because it's helping the team figure out what they're going to do in the future. So these product owners with that Scrum Master brain, they're willing to accept failures and then prune them and get rid of them and move on to try new things, to try new ways, to try new experiments. So a great product owner, just like a Scrum Master, is always looking for new things to try, not just in process, not just on how the team works together, but in the product itself, in their product backlog. What new things, new ways, new value can we deliver things? And they're willing to try these experiments. So they have to be willing to embrace these new experiments and get rid of the experiments that fail. The experiments that succeed in terms of the product backlog, they're willing to amplify those and invest more in those. What that means, just like any scrum master on a team has to help the team figure out their balance, is the product owner has to do the exact same thing in their product backlog. They have to figure out how to balance the work. How can I balance work that's everyday business as usual work that needs to be done versus work that's experimental and could result in failure or success? They have to learn that balance. They have to figure out how to prioritize the work on their product backlog, ideally with the help of their team and their stakeholders to help them coach the backlog. All right, so experimentation. What else would this product owner with a Scrum Master's brain do? What other horrible things will this experiment yield? Well, Scrum Masters love to resolve conflict. Conflict can be healthy, right? So a great Scrum Master helps the team figure out how to surface that conflict and then resolve that conflict in a healthy way. That same attitude, the product owner should be using that mindset, that Scrum Master brain, to resolve conflicts, not in how people work together or on the team, but yes, in the product backlog. So, how is conflict reflected in the product backlog, and how can they help resolve it in a healthy way? All of the conflicts in a product backlog is usually around backlog ordering. There's so many different ways that backlog ordering, otherwise known as prioritization, creates conflict in your product backlog. It might be due to dependencies, for example. We talked about dependencies, aka impediments, earlier. When you have dependencies in a product backlog, it can force the product owner to order the work in ways that doesn't make sense or that don't maximize the delivery of value because there's some other dependency or parameter or constraint coming into a play. So the best way a product owner can healthfully resolve conflicts in their product backlog is by figuring out how to order their product backlog. Now, this is easier said than done. They might have to come up with many different ways to think about how do I, as a product owner with a Scrum Master's brain, prioritize and order the product backlog. If you can do it based on value, then that's great. But sometimes that's hard to achieve. There might be other things you need to think about, like dependencies or dates or risks. But if you as a product owner can figure out how to order your product backlog, then it goes a long way to resolving conflict. And as you prioritize or order your product backlog, and as you coach the product backlog, otherwise known as refine it, you'll learn things. The product backlog will change. So as your product backlog emerges and changes, you continue to coach it. Coach that product backlog all the time. This activity of coaching the product backlog is a frequent activity where the product owner is opening up the product backlog and working with people to figure out how to make it a pretty great product backlog. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be of high quality. And this product owner is willing to listen to the team and the stakeholders about what they think. They're all involved in it together. How can we help this product backlog be ordered in a way that makes sense? How can we reorder it when we need to based on when we learn things and as it changes? This is sometimes very hard to do, but embracing that Scrum Master brain can really shift your perspective as a product owner. Rather than turning your product backlog into something you hate, maybe you'll end up with a product backlog as something you love. Because Scrum Masters are always thinking about, how can I help the team be a happy team? How can I help the people on the team be happy? How can I make work joyful? And a product owner with the Scrum Master's brain would have that same attitude. How can I create happiness? How can I create joy? Now, a Scrum Master obviously is focused on the team and the people. So, what would a product owner with a Scrum Master's brain be interested in creating happiness in? The product backlog, obviously. So, imagine a world where your product backlog looks happy. I'm willing to bet there are a lot of people today in this audience who have product backlogs, and you can just look at those product backlogs, and they don't look like happy product backlogs. They look angry or they look sad. But when you open up a loved, nurtured, coached product backlog, it just looks happy. It's a thing of joy. In fact, when people open up those product backlogs and they look at them, a smile comes on their face. They want to look at that product backlog. Everyone on the team wants to look at that product backlog. All the stakeholders want to look at that product backlog. Imagine a world where the product owner wants to open up their product backlog and coach it every day because it's happy. And why do they want to do it every day? These teams, these people, these stakeholders, these product owners with Scrum Masters brains. It's because the product backlog looks happy and causes happiness. It's a virtuous cycle where that product backlog is being coached into a joyful state and it's causing joy. And I think being a product owner is a really tough job. And if you can embrace joy and happiness in any way possible, I think you should. All right. We've just thought about and reflected on a product owner with a Scrum Master's brain. They've taken all these things that Scrum Masters love to do, their behaviors, their values, and we've applied it to the product owner, and we've applied all these things to the product backlog. But that's not the end of the experiment, right? There's the other side of the coin to think about. So now what I invite you to think about is the other side of the coin. Can you imagine a world where you have a Scrum Master with the product owner's brain? Oh, well, I'm sure we have many Scrum Masters out here in the audience tonight. Can you imagine thinking about stuff like a product owner would? What would that look like? Well, let's think about what product owners like to do. Well, if you know product owners, there's one thing they love to do. Product owners love to refine. Yes, they love to refine. I mean, that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to refine the product backlog. Otherwise, how else is the team going to know what to work on and what to do when they're going into their sprints? All right, so if you think about a product owner who loves to refine, How would a Scrum Master with a product owner's brain love to refine? Ah, well, they wouldn't refine the product backlog, would they? They'd refine something else. So, what would a Scrum Master refine? Ah, just like backlog refining is now called backlog coaching. Well, it's no longer called the retrospective in Scrum. It's called team refining because this is the opportunity, the time, and the place for the team to get together, the Scrum Master to help the team refine themselves. Because refining is about getting something better, making it more pure, getting it down to its essence. That's what refining is, making it actionable. But it wouldn't be about the product backlog anymore because the Scrum Master doesn't manage the product backlog. The Scrum Master serves the team. So they would be helping the team figure out how to refine how they work together as people, and not only how they're working together as a people and as a team, but helping the team figure out how to refine their Agile or Scrum process. Yeah, it's much more analytical now. They're thinking about how can I help the team make things better, how they work together, how they are as individuals, and the processes they use. Now, a product owner is refining their product backlog because they're trying to figure out how to make the work achievable by the team. In this particular horrible experiment, the same exact thing applies. This is a Scrum Master trying to figure out how to refine the team to make stuff more achievable. So, if we continue to explore this horrible experiment, what else would happen? So, remember, it's not the retrospective anymore, it's team refining. Well, what else do product owners like to do that Scrum Masters might adopt? Well, product owners love stories, right? I'm sure many of you out there tonight have your work expressed in your product backlogs as stories. Stories are just user perspective pieces of work. Now, a product owner usually uses stories to reflect work or product or services that the customer wants. But this is a Scrum Master, remember, although they have a product owner's brain. They would be thinking about stories to improve or refine the people or the team or the processes. Yes, so that's when they start to create stories to help people get better and to help the team get better and to help the process get better. That's right. A Scrum Master with a product owner's brain thinks about how can I take these actionable items that actually improve and refine things for the people, the team, and the processes. Now these stories are in the actual product backlog or product backlogs of some type because we're going to continue to explore that theme. Sometimes we write stories as 3 lines and they're very simple, 3 simple lines. But as we know, product owners love to put more detail in stories so that they're actionable by the team. Well, the same thing applies to a Scrum Master with a product owner's brain. How can they make these stories for these 3 different improvement types actionable by the team? It would need to go beyond just 3 lines, beyond just user stories for people and team and process improvements. What else would this horrible experiment yield? What else do they need to do? Oh, well, just like a product owner has to figure out the value of work or the value of stories, they also need to figure out acceptance criteria. I'm sure we have product owners out there in the audience tonight. And when you create a story, you're also trying to figure out, hey, for this story, for this product backlog item, I'm also trying to figure out the value of that story, because the value of that story helps me figure out how to order and prioritize the product backlog. And beyond that, I need acceptance criteria as well. How do I know when that work's done or not? So that Scrum Master with the product owner's brain has to figure out, how can I assign value? How can I assign acceptance criteria to these improvement stories? So yeah, that means if you come up with improvement stories for people and for the team and for the process, you should be creating acceptance criteria. The same rigor, the same discipline a product owner would apply to a user story in their product backlog for their product or their services, that same exact rigor and discipline applies to improvement stories. So you have to create acceptance criteria for these things. In fact, just like you coach or refine your product backlog, you, as the Scrum Master with the product owner's brain, are working with the team and the actual product owner to refine these improvement stories to make sure that they have acceptance criteria. If they don't have acceptance criteria, how else do you know when that work is not? And beyond that, you have to figure out the value of these stories. Value is the primary way that the product owner prioritizes or orders their product backlog. And the same is true for any other story in their product backlog, including improvement stories. So, yes, you, Scrum Master with the product owner's brain, have to figure out, how can we identify value for these improvement stories? Now, when a product owner can figure out value in ways that are very clear, like, if we do this work, we'll make so much money. If we do this work, we'll save so much money. When there are like dollar figures you can assign to value, sometimes it can make your decisions around prioritization or ordering the product backlog a lot simpler. But these improvement stories can be sometimes quite difficult to figure out that kind of, I don't want to say easy value, but straightforward value. So just like a team has to figure out the value of doing work like refactoring or working on technical debt, you as a team, as a Scrum Master with the product owner's brain, have to coach the product backlog, have to coach and refine these improvement stories to figure out, how can we identify value. You might have to come up with analogies like t-shirt sizes. The value of doing this work is an extra small, small, medium, large, or extra large. So value is a thing that you have to figure out, not only as a product owner because you're trying to maximize value, but also as a team, as a Scrum Master, because you have to sometimes figure out value metaphors and analogies that you can apply to work so that you can prioritize the product backlog in ways that make sense. Now, you can see this Scrum Master with a product owner's brain is much more analytical. They're starting to apply these product backlog these to the team rather than the other way around before. Now we're taking these very structured product backlog techniques and applying them to the team. What else do product owners love to do that a Scrum Master might have to adopt? Well, product owners obviously love product backlogs. But imagine a world where you have an improvement backlog. Where would this improvement backlog or backlogs exist and what would be in them. I mean, you've got to track this work. You've got to prioritize this work just like any other product owner would because you have a product owner's brain. So let's explore that. All of the team, all of the process improvement items should be in your actual product backlog, which means it's public, it's viewable, all your stakeholders can see it, the entire team can see it. All of that work is coached or refined in the team activity with the product owner and the stakeholders figuring out the value, the acceptance criteria. That means you're figuring out the value of these improvement items relative to your actual product or your actual services. I mean, if you're going to spend time and money on these things, then you need to be able to figure out the priority of all that work against each other. Should we work on actual product stuff for the customer, or should we work on stuff that helps the team get better? You have to make those judgment calls. So all those team and process improvement items, they go in the public backlog, but you don't put the individual improvement items into the public backlog. The Scrum Master with the product owner's brain maintains a private backlog that's based on how we help people improve, and it's ordered by value. That way, it gives them the psychological safety to figure out what to do. Okay. And you got to have a definition of done. So, you as a Scrum Master have to figure out when work is done or not. You apply the same rigor a product owner would when work is going to get done. Figure out where your people are, your team, your process, where they're at right now. That's your definition of done, where they are right now. Make sure that they're always reaching that hygiene level and then always constantly strive to improve your definition of done, just like your actual product. And then you review all that work, just like a product owner. The team improvements reviewed by the actual product owner. The process improvements also reviewed by the actual product owner, but the personal improvements for each person on the team reviewed by the Scrum Master. Figure out when work is done or not based on acceptance criteria and your definition of done. And get better at it. Apply improvement loops. Just like a product owner uses feedback loops for their product, do the same thing as a Scrum Master with a product owner's brain. Have a steady flow of improvement work through the system. Make them small and refine them and easy. And work with your product owner to allocate velocity in your actual team for these improvement items. So there you go. There's the conclusion of the experiment. What can I leave you with? The product owner can coach their backlog. So are they the backlog master? And the Scrum Master can refine their team. Are they the team owner? Is this the moral of the story? Is it based on titles? No, it's not. You don't have to be an evil genius. Everyone on the team should learn from each other, like the product owner and Scrum Master can. And it's about the mindset, not just the skills. And so, thank you. You've all been great. I love you all. And thank you for having me. It was a terrible, terrible experiment.